This is a hardcore grind interview with the Honorable Judge Maureen E. Wood. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we thank you for making time. I know that you're very busy. Now, I always like to ask about a goal moment, right? Because a goal moment is when thought and execution come together. A lot of times, really mindful about other people, how they motivate themselves and pour into themselves and think about themselves. But a lot of times, when it comes to the things that we really want to do or things that we become passionate about, we normally lead with a little fear, and we're lukewarm in making moves. So when I just want to just go back a little bit, what inspires you to go into law?
Oh man, that's a really interesting journey for me. So I actually grew up thinking that I was going to be an engineer, and I think that was because my parents spent a lot of time emphasizing to me the importance of STEM majors and STEM careers in the future. And so they invested a lot of time in sending me to different camps and different summer programs that were all oriented towards minorities in engineering, minorities in STEM. And so that's how I got exposed to HBCUs. That's how I got exposed to different engineering programs. And so I really went into school with the mindset that I was going to be a biomedical engineer. I was going to help design different medical devices, and I was going to help design different, like, limbs for people that needed prosthetics. That's what I was going to do. You couldn't have told me anything differently. And so I got into let me back up. I knew I wanted to be at Spelman. I had an older cousin who I just adored and looked up to who was at Spelman, and I visited her, and I stepped on that campus, and I said, this is where I have to be. And so I applied for Spelman, and I got in, and I was so excited. I told my parents I got in, and the funniest part about the whole thing was my parents were like, oh, that's great, but we can't pay for that. They're like, you have two other siblings. Like, we can't pay for you to go to Spelman. You better get some scholarships. And so the scholarships that I got from Spelman, one of them in particular was focused on women in science and engineering. And like I said, that was kind of the path that I was thinking I was going all along. And so the catch was they said, we don't want you to take this scholarship and major in biology and become a doctor. We really want you to, really delve into the science and engineering piece. And so I said, that's perfect. I'm good in science and math. I'll just be a math major, and I'll major for 3 years at Spelman and get my degree, and then I'll do 2 years at Georgia Tech. And so I got into that math major, and by my second year, I realized that the math that I loved so much was not the math that was not the math that you are doing after your second year in college in a math major. A lot of the numbers go away. There's a lot of theory. And, I don't want to say I was miserable, but I knew that's not where I didn't enjoy it. And I wanted to enjoy what I was doing. And so I really had to say, is this what I want to do? And I said, no, it's really not. And so it really took me looking around and evaluating, what am I good at? Where do I see myself in the future? And so many people at Spelman were focusing on going to medical school. They were focusing on going to law school, focusing on going to graduate school and taking the steps to do that. And so I really had that push to be doing the same thing. And I decided that I knew I would be a great lawyer and I would be an amazing judge. And that's the self-confidence I think that you have when you're used to being the oldest in the family, and you're used to kind of, people listening to you. And so I just had the confidence that would be something that was great for me. So I dropped the dual degree engineering. I kept the math major because I didn't want to be in school longer. And I just picked up a political science minor. And from that point, I pivoted. And I got to law school, and I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I loved all the classes. I loved the things that I was learning. And the thing that I loved the most about what I was learning in law school was the time that I spent practicing to become a lawyer. So I did a legal aid clinic where we went up to the Appalachian Mountains and we helped some of the poorest people with their legal issues. I did the Tennessee Law Clinic where we helped women who were battered get TPOs. We helped people who were getting evicted from their homes, try to represent them and hopefully help them stay in their homes longer. Lots of public interest law. And I found that that's where I really, really enjoyed myself. I also did a lot of family law working at a all-women family law firm. And so I found a passion in representing people in the time that they needed the most advocacy when they're going through their personal struggles, and that's in their divorces and their child custody matters. It can be a very emotional time for people. And I saw how they really relied on their lawyer to be the one to give them strong legal advice and to be in their corner at some of their darkest hours. So it's just interesting how the journey shifted from thinking I'm going to be an engineer to coming to the point where it's like, no, not only are you going to be a lawyer, but you're going to advocate for people. You're going to help people that need you the most. So that's kind of how that happened.
I love it. And then now you're only one of a few child welfare law specialists. Why did you pick that as your specialty?
So the child welfare law specialist is a specialization through the National Association of Counsel for Children, and it's a nationwide, different whatever state you reside in, that is something that you can apply to become a child welfare law specialist. But you have to be practicing in the area for at least 3 years before you apply, and you have to take an exam. It's just very similar to the bar exam that you take, but it's for child welfare law. And the state of Georgia, they did not bring the specialty to the state of Georgia until 2009 or 2010. And so I remember being at a child welfare conference in Savannah in 2008, and one of the sessions was training for the Red Book. And it was a national conference, so even though it was in Georgia, we didn't have, the child welfare specialist test in the state of Georgia yet. So people from the other parts of the country had come to this conference, and part of it is they were training for the test. So I remember thinking, man, if we had that in Georgia, I would definitely do that. I love to learn. I'm a lifelong learner, and I like to provide the absolute best that I can when it comes to my clients and the representation of my clients. And so when I saw that there was a specialty in that area, I was already practicing in family law. I was already practicing child welfare and neglect cases in juvenile law. I thought it was really important to be able to say I'm the best at this, and to show that I have the certification to be able to say that. And obviously, when I say I'm the best, I don't want it to sound like I'm cocky or anything like that. But I think when you represent people and when you advocate for people, you want them to be confident that you know what you're doing. You want them to be confident that you are someone that they can trust with their problems. Because, you're talking about what's most precious to you, and that's your children. So I was drawn to take the test because I knew that was something that not very many people had, that certification, and I knew that what it meant was you're an expert in the area. And I waited. I started to take it in 2010. And I waited because it was a very new specialty, and I was, at the time, I'm weighing like, this is new, nobody has this in Georgia. Is it worth all this extra time and money that you're putting into it to study and to get ready for it, the money that you put into it to take the test? It's not a specialty that's recognized yet in the state of Georgia. And so I waited, and I decided after, I saw a couple of years that, this is something that, is going to stick here in Georgia. I said, well, let me go ahead and take that test. And so I studied, and I got prepared for it. And I'm so glad that I did because we're such a small group. It's right now it's 76 of us. Forever it was only about 50 of us. And we meet, actually, all the specialists in the state of Georgia, we meet about twice a year. And we come together and we oftentimes train on issues. We talk about emerging issues in the area. We give our expertise. Oftentimes we are looked to when it's time to consult on new laws or to consult regarding issues in the law. So it's really been great because you really are looked at as someone who's an expert in the field, and you're relied upon. I've been asked to speak on different child welfare issues, and I know a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's only so many of us in the state that have that certification. So I think it served me well.
You are listening to Hardcore Grind Podcast with the fabulous Lissha Sattler. Today I am interviewing the Honorable Judge Maureen E. Woods. This is a very, very exciting episode for me. I hope you enjoy it. Now, Judge Woods has served as Rockdale County Juvenile Court Judge since 2016. She's an alumni of Spelman, as you've heard so far in the interview. And she obtained her Juris Doctorate degree from the University of Tennessee College of Law. So I'm loving this interview, and we shall continue. What is your judicial philosophy?
So access to justice and equal access to justice is very important to me. That is one thing. It's important because for years I would represent people in all different courts in the metro area and oftentimes a little further north, south, east, or west, depending on my clientele. And what I would see time and time again is people come out of court and you would hear them say things like, I don't think the judge gave me a chance to explain myself, or the other person had a lawyer and the judge didn't listen to me, they listened to the other lawyer, or I have no idea what happened, everything is a blur, right? And basically people walking out of court feeling like they weren't heard and the process wasn't necessarily fair for them. And it's important to me that no matter if you represent yourself and you have $2 in your pocket, or you have a team of lawyers and you have millions of dollars, when you come into my courtroom, you feel like you had a judge who gave you the opportunity to present your case, to be heard, and was fair. And so for me, it's an access to justice issue, and it's about promoting the judiciary at all times. The other thing that I would say fuels me and would be a philosophy for me is my judicial temperament. And what I mean by that is you should come into court and know that your judge is, it doesn't matter if she or he had a bad day. It doesn't matter if the case beforehand was just a horrible case and she or he was riled up. It doesn't matter if it's almost lunchtime. Like, you want to have a judge whose temperament is such that you don't have to worry about outside factors influencing the decision in the case. It's very important to you in your life. Mm-hmm. So those are the two major things. It's access to justice, equal access to justice, and then the other thing is judicial temperament that promotes confidence in the judiciary.
I love it. Now, who's been your biggest support system throughout this journey?
Oh, man, definitely family. So between my husband and my kids and, my mom and dad and in-laws, like, everyone around me is like, you go, girl. You know what I mean? Nobody's like, are you sure about that? Or do you want to do that? Or why would you, close down your practice and go into being a juvenile court judge? Why would you? Nobody does that, right? It's almost like whatever you say that you want to do, it's like, yeah, we're your cheerleader. Go for it. You can do whatever you want to do. So I just love that about my family. They're very supportive.
I love it. Now, who are some of your role models, and what lessons have you learned along the way?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh, man. So I have so many different role models for so many different reasons, right? When I look at community advocacy, I think of my grandmother. She was a first in so many areas in my hometown in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. She was, one of the first Black women to teach at Middle Tennessee State University. She was I think she was the first Black woman to be on the city council in Murfreesboro, which was a predominantly white town. She was very active in her sorority. I saw her bring in college girls into her home. She was an advisor for the sorority. I saw her, advocate in so many ways. I saw her give of herself and her time to community issues. She was an amazing public speaker, and she just taught me so much about what it meant to, be someone who was a public servant and a community servant. And at the time, I didn't realize how much I was learning. It's not until you get older and it's like, oh, wait a minute, grandmama was doing all of this and plus some, So that I definitely think it's great to have people in your community that you can look up to, and definitely when they're in your family, right? Because it's like, man, that's achievable. That I can touch that. I can see that, and growing up seeing that was amazing. When I look at some of the goals that I have for myself now and who I look up to, I have so many women Superior Court judges who are just rocking it out. And what I mean by that is, the bench in general looks a certain way, right? It's usually older men, right? And so especially in this Atlanta area, and I don't mean to name drop, but I don't think people know. I guess if you're not in the law, you just may not know just the headway that we're making as women in this area. Douglas County, and the problem with naming names is you miss people, right? But we'll start to the east, right? You have Douglas County. You have the Honorable Dia Warren. She's my Spelman sister. She's my sorority sister, right? You have the Honorable Cynthia Adams. Those are two Superior Court judges, women, both my sorority sisters, both in Douglas County, right? That is historic. Both of those are historic, right? You move to DeKalb County, and you have, oh my gosh, so many amazing women that are on the Superior Court bench there that I look up to. Judge Asha Jackson, judge who was the chief judge. She started Project Pinnacle, which is basically a second chance program for youthful offenders. She's got nationwide attention for that. You should check out that program and what it's doing to change the lives of people who come through the Superior Court. You look at the Honorable Letitia Deer. She's also one of my Spelman sisters, and she's also in my sorority. She's the chief judge right now of DeKalb County. You look at Judge Nora Polk. You look at Judge Courtney Johnson. You look at Judge Tangela Berry. Like DeKalb County, oh my gosh. You look at Judge Yolanda Smith Parker, who's one of my sorority sisters. If you go to Cobb County, you look at Judge Kelly Hill, Superior Court judge. You look at Judge Sonia Natasha Brown, also one of my sorority sisters. If you go to Clayton County, you look at Judge Shayna Rooks, who is also my Spelman sister and my sorority sister. She's a Superior Court judge. Like literally north, south, east, west. You look further east to Augusta, you have my sorority sister, Superior Court Judge Amanda Heath. Like, it is amazing to see so many women serving on the bench in the Superior Court that I can call, that I can ask questions, that I can just say, I'm so proud of you. It's just amazing. And I think it's important because when you walk into the courtroom, it's something to see people who look like you that are not only the defendant, right? To see people who look like you that are the judge, to see people who look like you that are the lawyers, to see people who look like you that are the bailiff. And it just makes a difference when it comes to the perception that justice can be equal for everyone. And so they're just doing amazing things in their positions. And once again, it's really good when you have a goal to be able to see people that you can say, wow, they're doing it. And they're doing an amazing job. So those are just some people that I look up to, but I have so many people. That's one thing. I don't think there's a shortage of people to look up to, especially around me and in the Atlanta area. And, you know, it's just amazing. It really is.
I love it. Now, as a Black woman, a mother, and a wife, what have you learned the most about yourself?
Oh, gosh. You know, I used to be kind of hard on myself because I would feel like, oh my God. So I have 3 girls, right? And having 3 daughters, I had to make, and I've always been very active. I've always tried to hold, you know, leadership positions, tried to be very active in the community. And I've always worked really. I'm a hard worker, right? I worked for me and my husband. We had our own firm forever, worked for ourselves. When you work for yourself, if you don't work, you don't eat. You know, it's just that entrepreneurial spirit. And it was always very hard to balance all the things that you want to do when you're a mother, right? And you have a business, and, you know, and you're married, and you want to be active in your community because you want to give 100% to everything. And so I definitely was pretty hard on myself, especially very early on when I was when the girls were much younger, because I always felt like I could be doing so much more. But what I learned is you have to give yourself grace, and you have to prioritize, and you have to realize there's a time and a season for everything, right? Mm-hmm. And so there was a time in the season that I'm like 100% everything revolved around raising those babies, right? And that doesn't mean that you don't work, and that doesn't mean you're not active in the community as well. It just looks different because it's a different season. And so then, you know, they've gotten older, and, you know, you still work hard, but you're able to give more time to other things, right? And so because they're a little bit more independent, you know, 2 of them are basically adults. They're in college, you know, everybody that has college kids knows that they're not actually adults, and they probably need you just as much, if not more, than the babies do. But right. It just looks different, you know. And so for me, it's just realizing, like, there's a different, you know, you go through different seasons, and it's okay. You know, you can't do everything at 100%, and it's okay to prioritize and give yourself some grace.
I love it. Now, Judge Constance Baker Motley was the first African-American female federal judge. What are some of the pressures you face as a female judge?
Oh, man, the same pressures that we all face as women in our careers, right, especially if they're male-dominated careers. So, you know, right now I'm running for Superior Court judge, and sometimes people will say, well, are you going to be soft on crime? You know, and it's, you know, are you going to be able to make tough decisions? And so the first thing that's going through my head is, do they even know what we do every day? Do they even know the types of decisions that we have to make? Like, to me, there's no such thing as being soft on crime when you have sentencing guidelines that say this is the type of sentence for this type of crime, right? If you follow the rules, it's a no-brainer, right? The harder thing to do is what I have to do. It never fails. I have multiple cases every single year where I am in the position to have to make a decision to terminate the parental rights of someone. And what that means, that's the civil death penalty. To me, like sentencing a murderer, no problem. That's pretty easy peasy. But terminating the rights of someone, severing their relationship with their child, severing that child's relationship with that parent, because that parent has not been able to cure the causes of the neglect that caused the child to come into custody of the state. You know, these issues are deep-rooted issues. You know, juvenile law and family law is very, very complex, right? Like, children don't get taken away because, you know, someone is in poverty. Children don't get taken away because someone is homeless. children get taken away because it's not safe in the home. But I'm going to be honest with you, it's very rare that I have a case where there's a termination of parental rights and there's a parent who doesn't love their children. That's not the issue. The issue is usually they have deep-rooted, whether it's mental health issues that they're not addressing or able to address, or substance use disorder issues that are unrehabilitated, and you have children that are languishing in foster care and it's not safe for them to go back. Those are tough decisions to make. So I think that idea or that thought process is because you're a woman, you're not going to be able to make tough decisions is just crazy to me. But there are people that have the audacity to think that way this day and age. And so that's tough. But I think as women, we all experience people who are hung up on different stereotypes and biases, and we can't control that. You just have to roll with it, do your job, and keep it moving.
Absolutely. Now, you've been given a powerful gift and position to inspire so many women around the country. How does it make you feel?
Oh man, I'm blessed beyond measure. It's heavy because people are definitely proud of you and they're looking up to you, but also it challenges me to make sure that I'm always representing us women in the profession in the best light possible. And I'm proud, I'm blessed, and hopefully when people see me, I convey the best. And that is, I'm a hard worker. That is, I strive for excellence. That is, I want to be fair. I want to be approachable. I want to be someone who, after you meet me, you leave saying, man, we're going to be all right. You know what I mean? And so it is. It's a blessing, and I am so grateful for that. And I just know what a big deal it is. And I just know how many people's shoulders I'm standing on. And so you just have to be cognizant of that every single day. You can't take it for granted.
Absolutely. Now, a lot of juveniles are a product of their environment or traumas and sometimes home life. I recently read that Georgia is the only state that has sentenced more young people to life without parole. What is your approach to cases that come before you that are severe, and how do you ensure that these youth have a chance to be rehabilitated?
Mm-hmm. So, one thing about the juvenile law is we are required to make efforts to rehabilitate youthful offenders. And so absolutely there is a place for punishment. Absolutely there is a place for holding young people accountable. But the thought process and the intent of the people who write the juvenile statute and the legislators who create these laws is that this is your opportunity to get in there and really do some interventions that can help someone who's going down the wrong path turn their life around before they become an adult. And so it's a tremendous responsibility. And like you said, there are so many different factors and so many different issues that are playing in these young people's lives that contribute to their situation. Mm-hmm. But it's a challenge that I'm ready to meet every single day. If I see that there is a program out there that these kids will benefit from, and there is a way for me to bring it to Rockdale County, I'm going to bring it to Rockdale County. Like if I see that there is a grant out there that's going to help pay for, implementation of some of these programs, and I know that means that that's not going to be the burden of our local taxpayers who are already stretched thin, I'm going to apply for that grant. And I'm going to do the work to make sure when I apply for that grant that we're going to be able to uphold whatever the rules are for the grant program, and we're going to be able to operate the models to fidelity, best practice, right? We're not just going to just make up programs and throw something against the wall and see if it sticks, because you're talking about children and you're talking about people's lives. So we make sure we do a lot of research, and anything that we bring to the court is something that's evidence-based. What that means is it's proven that if it's implemented the way that it was created and designed, then it's going to be effective for most people. And then the other thing, and you'll hear me say it, you got to give yourself grace. What I mean by that is, like, we are not magicians, right? Like, we can put in the best programs and we can have all the support there. We can have the funding there. We can have all the time in the world. We can, do all of those things, and it might not work for everybody. But that's how you go to sleep at night, knowing that you've just given the best effort and that that you're doing the best that you can. I love that about the juvenile code, that there is that rehabilitative component to it, because ultimately, what kind of job would it be that all you're doing is punishing people all the time, right? Like what kind of job would that be when you're not doing anything to help set people up for success, to be able to change their lives around?
Absolutely. Now, many juveniles that suffer from mental health issues seem to be stuck in the system. As a judge, how can you address that from the bench?
That's a good question. That it's complex because there are a couple of different things at play for young people with mental health issues from what I've observed in my jurisdiction. And I think, because as judges, we talk and we try to learn from one another and see what everybody's doing. And I think it plagues a lot of people. There's one thing, and that is when you have any type of cultural or social norms that are being challenged when you talk about mental health, right? And you talk about the need for interventions. So oftentimes I'll have young people who obviously could benefit from therapy, who obviously could benefit from a psychological evaluation, who obviously could benefit from psychiatric help, right? Medication management, those types of things. But then you have parents that say, "Oh no, we're not taking any medication. Oh no, we're not talking to any therapists. Oh no, we don't do that. We'll go to church and we'll pray." And yes, 100% go to church and pray. But if you have a young person that is facing a mental health crisis, if you have someone who is obviously exhibiting signs of some serious mental illnesses, it's really hard when you're battling this idea that that's not for us. You know what I mean? So that's one challenge we see, because when we're talking about young people, so oftentimes we got to get the whole family on board, right, with whatever the intervention is. The other thing that I see is resources, lack of resources. So the majority of young people who come through my system have state-sponsored Medicaid. Oftentimes they will have that's their insurance. If they have insurance, that's what it is. And even the young people who come through with private insurance, the resources, the mental health resources available for young people, especially the ones with severe mental health issues, we really are lacking in the state of Georgia in terms of the options. And you'll see that. You'll see articles about it. You'll see, obviously, we don't want to go back to a place where we are, institutionalizing children long term, right? That's not what I'm saying, and I don't think that that's the answer. But we certainly could use more mental health resources for young people in the community. And so I make it a point when I have young people come through, we have someone that can make sure that they have assessments to determine whether or not they need a higher level of care, to determine whether or not they need individual therapy, whether they would benefit from group therapy, whether they have a substance use disorder, whether they would benefit from services in the community. We have a drug court program. We have a mental health program. Oftentimes, young people who are struggling with mental health issues are also struggling with drug issues. So we do a lot in terms of assessing the young person and the family to see what kind of services that they need. And we do a lot in terms of making sure we know what's available in the community and in the surrounding area. And so what that means is getting to know who our stakeholders are, especially in the mental health realm, and being able to, refer people to services in the community. But it's tough because you're right. Oftentimes when you see, and it's the same way with adults in the adult criminal system, you'll see people that seem to be repeat offenders or stuck in the system, and when you get down to it, they're struggling with mental health issues that just are untreated. And so it's definitely a challenge. I don't know that it's a challenge that's going away. I think what you have to do as a court system is you have to make sure that you have the resources in place so that people can get the proper assessment, so that they can get the proper referrals, and they can get the proper treatment that they need. And then the other part of that is changing the mindset and educating the family so that the family knows, what to do if a young person is in a mental health crisis. Mental health crisis doesn't mean call 911 necessarily. Like, what is the crisis hotline? What is the plan, for someone that is experiencing a mental health breakdown or issue? And so that's the other part, is just educating the family as to how to respond to young people when they're in crises, and sometimes that can help them avoid the system as well.
Absolutely. Now, how can you as a judge address the racial bias and economic injustice that's present in our court system?
So I think that when we talk about racial biases and economic injustices that are prevalent in the court system, it's not an easy fix. I think it's a very complex issue. One of the things that we have going on in the juvenile court is we are a part of an initiative called JDAI, and that's Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative. And what that is it is an effort to look at the entire system, and that is the school system, law enforcement, the court system, every different area where a young person may have a touch with court involvement in the community, right? We know for young people, a lot of the times when they come into the court, they come in from an incident that may have happened in the schools, right? Or we know a lot of times a young person's interaction with law enforcement may be what triggers their involvement into the system. Or we know that a family that is reliant upon, and we talk about the economic piece, we know that a family that is reliant upon services like food stamps or WIC or anything where they have to, be in regular communication with a case manager or the Department of Human Services, they may have a higher incidence of being exposed to the juvenile court system, whether that's through the dependency and neglect side or that's through the delinquency side. So we have to examine what is happening at the ground level. What is happening? Is there an overabundance of law enforcement in certain communities? Is that why there's more touches in certain communities or certain neighborhoods with the system than in others? Is the presence of student resource officers in the school system, what is their philosophy when they're dealing with young people? Is their philosophy the same, let's say, at one school as it is with the other school? What are we doing to prevent the school-to-prison pipeline? So in my opinion, what the court can do and what we do is we make sure that we're trained up. So, and we offer not just training to our court staff, but also our other stakeholders through things like JDAI, Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative, where we can bring our stakeholders in and do trainings that way to make sure that we are aware of any type of inherent biases that we may have. Also, to make sure that we're aware of how young people may come into the system through all these different touches in the community, whether that's at school or whether that's how they interact with law enforcement or their opportunities to interact with law enforcement. And so I think the best thing to do is make people aware because you have to go to school, right? You have to live in a community that's safe and has law enforcement. And so I think it's incumbent on the court system to understand, like, where might you have biases, right? And if you are aware of that, then what are you doing to address that? Or law enforcement. Is there an over and abundance in certain neighborhoods because you get called there more often? Well, if that's the case, I'll give you an example. City of Conyers, they do a lot in terms of community policing so that they're not just in those neighborhoods when they get a call, but they're also there, playing basketball with the kids or helping bring a food drive or helping to, help a neighbor that is experiencing, need their groceries brought in or something. And so that their touches with the system look a little bit different than just when, they're being called there for an incident. So it's tough. There's no easy answers, but I think the best answer is training and acknowledgement of the biases and the injustices and making sure that you're aware of them and that you're not being a part of the problem.
I love it. Now, you started the Project Glow Girls group. Talk a little bit about that program.
So typically what you see in the juvenile court, and I think it's also mimicked in the adult criminal justice system as well, is you see the prevalence of boys, males, when it comes to committing crimes, right? Those are the ones that are being prosecuted. Those are the ones that are coming through the system the most. And so every so often you'll see a young lady come through court. And so what was happening was, and I've been the juvenile court judge since 2016, there was a period of time that I started to see more and more girls, young ladies, coming into the court system. And I could not figure out why. Like, what's the trend? What is happening in the community? What is happening in the school system? Oftentimes, the types of crimes that I was seeing with the young ladies were batteries, family violence batteries, lots of fighting, lots of violence towards each other, violence towards family members. And so there's just this undercurrent of something is going on. What is happening that we're having all these girls come through the system when I typically was not seeing that. The other thing that I noticed with young ladies was that they oftentimes they benefited from a different type of intervention sometimes, right? And so there are different models when it comes to intervention. One of them that I noticed that young ladies do really well is a strength-based approach. And so what that is when you say, hey, Maureen, instead of saying, Maureen, like, you got in this fight, you got this battery charge, you're on probation. These are all the things you cannot do. You can't go anywhere. You need to stay home. You can't be around whoever the person was you got into an altercation. You can't use your phone because all this started over something you did on social media. You can't go to any of the ball games anymore because you've been kicked out of school and now you're at the alternative school, so you can't do your pro-social activities. You can't. You're a bad kid, right? And that didn't necessarily work as well as saying, hey, Maureen, you got into this fight, and yes, you're going to be on probation. Yes, you're going to have to do this community service. Yes, you're going to have to be home, and no, you can't go to the ball games, and no, you can't go to regular school. You're going to have to be at this alternative school. But in addition to that, why don't you come over here, and why don't we take some time and look at the good things that you've got going on for yourself? What are you interested in? How can we promote those things for you? What is the underlying issue? Is there anger? Like, can we put anger management in place? What makes you happy? Like, how can we, what do you really like about yourself? How can we help you build up your self-esteem? Like, so the strength-based approach is what GLOW is all about. So these girls will go through a 10-week program where they have different people from the community that will come in, and they address things like self-esteem. They address things like self-care. We have a curriculum. It's called a Girl Circle curriculum, and it's a strength-based approach they get the opportunity to kind of really explore and delve into, what's going on with them in the inside. And they get to see women in the community who are doing some great things. If they're, whatever they're interested in, we try to connect them with mentors who, share their interests. And we've seen a lot of great results from that. The GLOW program is like one of the, that's the program everybody loves hearing about. And I think the reason why everyone loves hearing about the GLOW program, because it's like, when you talk about rehabilitation and when you talk about doing the work to try to change and transform someone's life, you can easily see how a program like that can produce those results. And so we just, with that program, we've been very, very blessed to have some really great people come in from the community and donate their time and their talents to these girls. And we've had a great group of girls over the years that have come through. I want to say we've had over 50 girls at this point that have come through. And 50 may not seem like a big number, but when you realize how few girls are come through the juvenile justice system, we've really been able to affect a lot of young ladies' lives. And the great thing is for most of them, the recidivism numbers are very low. And what that means is for most of them, they're one and done. And I'm talking about even the ones that have more serious charges. So overall, it's a great program. Everyone in the community loves to hear about it, and the girls love it. They really do. Because it's not, you don't go to the program and focus on what you did to get there.
Right.
You focus on their future and what they're going to do, and what great kids they are, and how much they have to look forward to in life, if they just get on the right track and start making better choices. So,
absolutely. I love that. Now, as an advocate for our youth, how would you prioritize the allocation of resources in the court system to get the youth more involved in the community?
So the juvenile code allows for all the juvenile courts in the state of Georgia to utilize a fund called supervision fees to go towards a lot of the programming. And so we don't really have to look to, so every court, every county department obviously has a budget and obviously receives resources from the county that come from the taxpayer to help make sure that these departments and these courts run, right? Mm-hmm. But for the programs that these young people go through, those funds come directly from really a couple of different sources. They come from the supervision fees by code. We collect those supervision fees, and then we apply those fees to some of our court programs. Mm-hmm. And then the other, obviously, if the majority of the young people who come through the court are indigent, obviously, the fees are not exorbitant, and they're not going to pay for all the programs that you put in place. So the other thing that you look towards is you look for grant funding. And so we have lots of funding, both at the state level and the federal level, that's aimed at addressing issues for young people in the juvenile court system, whether that be in the dependency and neglect side or whether that's on the delinquent side. And so I've been very good at promoting the idea that we need to seek out grant funding for programs that we want to implement in our court. And for the most part, we've been very successful at doing that. And so we have a number of different grants, either from state sources or from federal sources that fund our programs. It is really important when you are charged with rehabilitating offenders, whether we're talking about at the adult level or we're talking about in the juvenile court, that you actually have the resources to implement the programming that's been proven to work and help people. And so you can't do one without the other. You can't say, I'm going to create this program and then you can't fund it, right? And so the question was, how important is it to have the resources in the court system to help implement these programs? It's very important, but that's not something that we're going to look to the community to, for example, raise your property taxes to fund. That's not the way that works. Mm-hmm. Typically, we look to sources, whether it be state grant funding, federal grant funding, or supervision fees to cover the cost of our programming.
I love it. Now, there's a high cost to pursuing your vision, which can sometimes be really overwhelming. What advice
Mm-hmm.
would you give up and coming law students that want to become judges?
Mm-hmm. Man, examine your why, right? So, and what I mean by that is, first of all, if we are being honest with ourselves, being a judge is not something you pursue because you want to make a lot of money. It's not. So first examine why. And if you are motivated by money, I guarantee you'll do better in private practice. You'll do better, working for a firm. You'll do better financially, right? So examine your why. You need to want to be a community servant, because that's what you are. You're a public figure. You're a community servant. You need to want that. The other thing is you need to know who you are as a person, because what happens, and it happens to all of us, the minute that you get elected or appointed and you have that new title, depending on who you are at the core, like, man, you can get a really big head, like a really big head, because all of a sudden it used to be, hey, Maureen, or hey, Reen, what's going on? It's your honor. Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. Oh, let me roll out the red carpet for you because you're the judge. And for some people, they just want that title. They want that status. They want to be puffed up. They want to have this. And so for some people, if you're the type of person that you need that ego to be boosted, and you need people to call you your honor, and you need to be treated a certain way, to me, you don't need to be a judge. You really don't, because it's just that respect is the respect that people are given the title. You were Maureen yesterday, you got this job, and now you're judge. You're the same, right? The difference is that they're respecting the title. It's not necessarily all of a sudden magically you're this great, person that deserves to be revered. But for some people, they get robe rash, is what we call it. And that's basically you can't tell them anything. They are the most important person in the world. They are just, what doesn't stink anymore. And really what that does is it creates a situation where people in the community feed off that energy, right? They say, ooh, that person, did you see the way they act in court? Do you see the way they talk to the lawyers? Do you see the way they treat people who come through the court? And so what that does is, like, it gives the judiciary a bad name, right? It's just not what you need to do if you're the type of person that really feeds off of title and power. Mm-hmm. Because you're gonna have that title, and people are gonna treat you that way. But you're doing a disservice to the job if that's what motivates you. So I would tell the student, really evaluate why you want the job. And if you want it because of money, I'm telling you, you can make more in private practice being a public servant. Most of the lawyers that come into court make more than the judge does, right? So you're not doing it for the money. And then if you're doing it for title and status, just don't, because you're doing a disservice to the position, because you cannot be someone that's puffed up on pride and being in charge of making decisions in people's lives that really, can change the course of their lives. You're talking about making decisions on whether or not people get to keep custody of their children. You're talking about making decisions on whether or not people get their freedom and how much of their freedom they get. Decisions on whether or not people get to stay in their homes. It's not something that should be taken lightly, and the motivation can't be money and it can't be pride. You have to truly want to be a servant to the community, and you have to have a passion for helping people, especially because the people that are going to be coming in, most of them are at some of the lowest points they'll ever be in their life.
Absolutely. Now, you do a lot. You are working 24 hours a day. How do you balance life and law to avoid burning yourself out?
self-care is important, but honestly, I think for me, it's just a personality thing. I'm someone that I've just always been on the go. I've always been on the move. If we're being honest, when I was in private practice, I was, always in a different court, always, going representing people in different superior court, in DeKalb, superior court in Rockdale, superior court in Newton, you go to bankruptcy court and represent someone, you go to, federal district court. So you're all over the place all the time, right? So you're busy, you're on the go. And I came and I started this job in 2016, and I remember, sitting here after I had court and just kind of like, now what? Twiddling my fingers, like, what's going on? Like, what do I do now? If I'm not having court, am I supposed to be studying? Am I supposed to be reading treatises? Like, what do judges do? And so honestly, that's kind of what spurred me to start looking at the programs that we had and where we could improve, and what we needed to do to, bring more programming and bring more options for rehabilitation for these families and these kids and these families. And so what I didn't realize is, you start all these programs and then you're going to get really, really busy, right? You went from having court, a couple days a week to now the only day you don't have court is like Friday, and now you don't have any time. And you have a family, you have a husband, you have your sorority, you have your community organizations, you have all, you have these kids that are involved in gymnastics and softball, and they're in all these different organizations, and you're trying to balance all of that. And it's not easy. For me, I have to keep a calendar. If it's not on the calendar, it does not exist for me. And the other thing is, I have to tell myself you cannot make and do everything. So I have to prioritize. And then finally, I have to give myself grace. I've probably said that a million times, but I do. You have to give yourself grace. You realize that you cannot be 100% at everything all the time. So that's where prioritizing comes in, and giving yourself grace. But we do it all the time. I'm not the only one. I have so many friends and family members, just women in general that are working, raising families, out in the community, rocking it out. So that's the other thing. You have that sisterhood, right? You have people to the right of you and to the left of you that are doing the same thing, and we're all making it together, So, you can do it. You just gotta tell yourself, hey, you need to prioritize. Make sure you got it in your calendar, and give yourself some grace. You can't be 100% at everything all the time.
Absolutely. Now, recently you were the winner of the the Innovative Leadership Award. That's exciting.
Oh man, yeah, I was shocked. I was surprised, because usually, I'm seeing the people that are getting called up for that award, and it's like, all right, I'm clapping for them, like, yeah, they really deserve that. They're amazing. They're doing all these things, and they've been doing all these things in child welfare. And I don't think you ever stop and say, well, I'm doing all that. I've been doing so much. Or you don't think, when you're doing things for the right reason, when you're implementing programs because you need them, you're not thinking to yourself, oh, someday somebody's going to give me an award. Like, that's the furthest thing from your mind. So honestly, it blew me away when they called me and they were like, hey, we want to honor you for the stuff that you've been doing. I'm super humbled because I have so many, colleagues that are doing great things in their courts. I know so many people in the community that are running great nonprofit organizations and programs that are changing the lives of children. So the idea that I would be recognized in that way, it just blew me away. It really humbled me. It blew me away. And obviously I'm grateful for the recognition, but I'm not used to a bunch of spotlights on me. So the other part, it was just kind of like, okay, thank you. Let's, let me say my speech and sit on down, but I understand that it's important for people to know, what we've been doing, and there's a value in that too. So, and I was grateful for the award because I had the opportunity to say, it's not just me, it's this team of great people that I have around me that also believe in these kids and the work.
Yes. Now, you're running for Superior Court Judge of Rockdale County. What motivated your decision to run?
Yeah. So one thing about Superior Court, and I would say it's a statewide trend, it's not just a Rockdale County situation. These courts are not courts that you have a lot of turnover, right? And so the last time we had a contested race for Superior Court was in 2012. And so when I heard that Judge Mumford was retiring and he was serious about it, I knew that now was the time, because you're not talking about what's gonna, who's gonna be the Superior Court judge for next year. You're likely talking about who's going to be the Superior Court judge for maybe the next 10 or 12 or 16 years. That's what the trend is, right? And so there's an opportunity there to make so much change and to affect so many lives. I just could not pass it up. Because I've been able to lay such amazing groundwork here in the juvenile court. And my experience and my background is in the things that Superior Court handles every single day. Family law, addressing felony criminal matters, addressing, issues with whether it be title to land or issues in equity where a judge has to make a decision about what's fair. Like, that is just in my ballpark. And, what a lot of people don't know about Superior Court is there is this opportunity there to be able to not just have your accountability courts, but to operate them at a really, really high level. I've been able to implement it. We have 3 accountability courts here in the juvenile court. And, when I say that, I don't think people realize, like, I have 3 that I'm running by myself. 2 of them are like model courts at this point. Like, one of them, we just had a team that came over from Minnesota. They were here yesterday and today, and it was a peer visit. They're looking at us because of the best practices that we implement in our juvenile drug treatment court. And that's not me bragging on myself. That's me saying, not only do I have accountability courts, but we implement them in such a way that we make sure that we use best practices and we get the best results for our people. And so things like accountability courts, that's an access to justice issue. That's something that I know that I can bring to the Superior Court level as well. We already have a felony drug treatment court in Superior Court. We already have a mental health court in Superior Court. Those are things that not only can I go ahead and jump in on day one and preside over, but I can help elevate to make sure that the people of Rockdale County are getting the best. So I'm just it's an opportunity that I could not pass up because I love our community and I know the impact that I can make. Just look at what I've done over the last 7 years in juvenile court, and just imagine what I can do, in the Superior Court. I know what I can do for my community, and I know now's the time to do it.
Yes. I love it, and I so appreciate you sharing your time, space, and energy with me, taking time out to sit down with me. I thank you, and I appreciate you. I want you to shout out any social media that you have where people can follow you. If they want to support you, how can they go about doing that?
Absolutely. So Instagram is Judge Maureen Wood is my handle. Facebook is Judge Wood. I also have my campaign committee is Friends of Maureen Elizabeth Wood. And my website is electjudgewood.com. You can go to any of those and follow me and see what's going on in terms of the campaign, see what I've got going on in terms of our programs here in the juvenile court. And I'd love to have your support. Absolutely. I'd love to earn your support. I'd love for you to get to know who I am as a person and make the decision that Wood is the solid choice for Superior Court. I definitely am the type of judge who doesn't just sit on the bench, but I stand for the community. I absolutely love what I do, and I look forward to representing the people on the Superior Court bench.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your time on Hardcore Grind, and you have our support.
Thank you so much. This has been a